Tess knew that she must break down. Neither a religious sense of a certain moral validity in the previous union, nor a conscientious wish for candour could hold out against it much longer. She loved him so passionately, and he was so godly in her eyes, and being, though untrained, instinctively refined, her nature cried for his tutelary guidance. And thus, though Tess kept repeating to herself, "I can never be his wife," the words were in vain. A proof of her weakness lay in the very utterance of what calm strength would not have taken the trouble to formulate. Every sound of his voice, beginning on the cold subject, stirred her with a terrifying bliss, and she coveted the recantation she feared. His manner was, what man's is not, so much that of one who would love and cherish and defend her under any conditions, changes, charges or revelations, that her gloom lessened as she basked in it. The season meanwhile was drawing onward to the equinox, and though it was still fine, the days were much shorter. The dairy had again worked by morning candlelight for a long time, and a fresh renewal of Clare's pleading occurred one morning between 3 and 4. She had run up in her bedgown to his door to call him as usual, then had gone back to dress and call the others, and in 10 minutes was walking to the head of the stairs with a candle in her hand. At the same moment he came down the steps from above in his shirt-sleeves, and put his arm across the stairway. "Now, Miss Flirt, before you go down," he said peremptorily, "it is a fortnight since I spoke, and this won't do any longer. You must tell me what you mean, or I shall have to leave this house. My door was ajar just now, and I saw you. For your own safety I must go. You don't know. Well, is it to be yes at last?" "I'm only just up, Mr. Clare, and it's too early to take me to task," she pouted. "You need not call me Flirt. 'Tis cruel and untrue. Wait till by and by. Please wait till by and by. I will really think seriously about it between now and then. Let me go downstairs." She looked a little like what she said she was as, holding the candle sideways, she tried to smile away the seriousness of her words. "Call me Angel, then, and not Mr. Clare." "Angel." "Angel, dearest, why not?" "'Twould mean that I agree, wouldn't it?" "It would only mean that you love me, even if you cannot marry me, and you were so good as to own that long ago." "Very well, then. Angel, dearest, if I must," she murmured, looking at her candle, a roguish curl coming upon her mouth, notwithstanding her suspense. Clare had resolved never to kiss her until he had obtained her promise, but somehow, as Tess stood there in her pretty tucked-up milking gown, her hair carelessly heaped upon her head till there should be leisure to arrange it when skimming and milking were done, he broke his resolve, and brought his lips to her cheek for one moment. She passed downstairs very quickly, never looking back at him or saying another word. The other maids were already down, and the subject was not pursued. Except Marian, they all looked wistfully and suspiciously at the pair, in the sad yellow rays which the morning candles emitted in contrast with the first cold signals of the dawn without. When skimming was done, which, as the milk diminished with the approach of autumn, was a lessening process day by day, Retty and the rest went out. The lovers followed them. "Our tremulous lives are so different from theirs, are they not?" he musingly observed to her, as he regarded the 3 figures tripping before him through the frigid pallor of opening day. "Not so very different, I think," she said. "Why do you think that?" "There are very few women's lives that are not tremulous," Tess replied, pausing over the new word as if it impressed her. "There's more in those 3 than you think." "What is in them?" "Almost either of them," she began, perhaps would make a properer wife than I, and perhaps they love you as well as I, almost." "Oh, Tessie!" There were signs that it was almost an exquisite relief to her to hear the impatient exclamation, though she had resolved so intrepidly not to let generosity make one bid against herself. That was now done, and she had not the power to attempt self-immolation a second time then. They were joined by a milker from one of the cottages, and no more was said on that which concerned them so deeply. But Tess knew that this day would decide it. In the afternoon several of the dairyman's household and assistants went down to the meads as usual, a long way from the dairy, where many of the cows were milked without being driven home. The supply was getting less as the animals advanced in calf, and the supernumerary milkers of the lush green season had been dismissed. The work progressed leisurely. Each pailful was poured into tall cans that stood in a large spring waggon which had been brought upon the scene, and when they were milked the cows trailed away. Dairyman Crick, who was there with the rest, his wrapper gleaming miraculously white against the leaden evening sky, suddenly looked at his heavy watch. "Why, 'tis later than I thought," he said. "Begad, we shan't be soon enough with this milk at the station if we don't mind. There's no time to-day to take it home and mix it with the bulk afore sending off. It must go to station straight from here. Who'll drive it across?" Mr Clare volunteered to do so, though it was none of his business, asking Tess to accompany him. The evening, though sunless, had been warm and muggy for the season, and Tess had come out with her milking hood only, naked-armed and jacketless, certainly not dressed for a drive. She therefore replied by glancing over her scant habiliments, but Clare gently urged her. She assented by relinquishing her pail and stool to the dairyman to take home, and mounted the spring waggon beside Clare. End of chapter 29